just like seeing her for the first time.
He decided to accept it, and thought that he needed to make adjustments to his plan. After that they passed through the gate, and found themselves inside a spacious cave. They were walking slightly behind the rest of the team, and Tian, looking at Junio, asked why he didn't join the guild. He replied that he had already refused. He didn't want to talk about it anymore. One of the guys asked if he heard about the gate auction that was on Trenin. This morning the guy confirmed the girl's words and said that they said that high on Miss Guildone. She said that her friend was there. She heard that they named such a high price that no one even tried. Junio was interested in this, and thought, did they really find something there? Tian asked if he was interested in buying a gate. If you join the guild, you will be able to easily purchase special gates above bank. It's not only because of their resources. The guild's name gives certain privileges. Joining a guild can mean a lot to an awakened people adore and admire big guilds. The hunter will not only get a job, but also better income and rewards compared to others. In addition, by becoming part of a guild, the hunter can enjoy various benefits of the guild's influence. For example, he can get an entrance ticket to a special gate. It requires more than just skills or abilities, but also the dynamics of political relationships with this structure. The rare treasures that can be obtained in such places are naturally seized by large guilds. Tian said that he probably has a goal that he is aiming for. As an awakened one, whatever it is, it will be easier to achieve with. Overkill does not understand why he is refusing. MC sharply responded that it is none of his business, and he understands he is acting like this because probably no one has ever refused an offer to join Overkill, so he will make it clear he will not join any guild under any circumstances. These words made Tian surprised, and he froze in place. He thought, is it because of the injury he received after the destruction of the Dawned Guild that he read a Boutin the report, or is it something else? Whatever it is, he can't give up. Time passed. They moved deeper into the cave, and the mage girl, walking in front, began to light the way. They looked around, and suddenly the guy bumped into something and exclaimed, "What is this?" He touched his hair and, feeling some kind of threat in his fingers, asked, "Is this a web?" The girl raised her staff higher, helping to see everything, and the team leader stepped forward, saying that this is where the monster territory begins. It seems that all the hunters here are newbies, so he will explain briefly, although he is sure that everyone read the intel. Legion spiders appear here. The difficulty level of each creature is low. The peculiarity is that they live in groups according to the reconnaissance Uthor are about of them, which is not many. They have paralytic poison in their fangs, so they should be careful they can't let them bite you. Tian crouched down and took out a sword from his case, then turned to Junio and said that they were about to appear, so let him come closer. He sighed with a grin and told him not to worry about the assistant and just prepare for battle. Tian replied that all combat units must protect the supports and assistants. This is a rule of thought all hunters must follow regardless of ability and situation. It is so whether he wants it or not, MC said with a dissatisfied face, that no one adheres to such principles anymore. But suddenly his words were interrupted by a team member shouting that they were coming. Hearing the sounds, everyone immediately prepared themselves and raised their heads to the ceiling, and then the sound became louder. The sharp claws of the spiders hit the ground, and they began to approach them, moving along the walls and ceiling. Seeing the monsters, the swordsman trembled in fear and told himself to calm down. They would win if they did as they were taught. Out of the darkness came the spiders of the Legion, personal danger level E, and in the group there, danger level D. Minus the danger level changes depending on the size of the Legion. Seeing a whole horde of monsters, the hunters prepared themselves, after which the Spider Legion sped, opened, rushed to attack. The swordsman took a stable stance and swung his weapon, killing one spider, and then gritted his teeth harder and struck again. Meanwhile, the man in front of him held back the monsters with his shield, then gathered energy and hit them with it, throwing them back. The girl used magic, causing sparks to come from the staff, ricochetted forward and pierced the spiders. Watching their fight, Tian thought that this was not bad for a drink, so he did not have to worry about them. Junio, who was looking at the other side of the corridor, let out a surprised psychosing Tian to turn around and said that it didn't seem like there were a few dozen spiders. The spiders then jumped down from the ceiling and pounced on them, and Tian used his skill to swing his sword, frying several spiders, causing their charred bodies to fall to the ground. He continued to attack, and thought that the durability of these spiders was quite low compared to other monsters. He only needed to release some sword G. He didn't even need to use Theblade this way. He could finish the raid without losing his weapon. He continued to fry the spiders, and a cry for help was heard from behind him. The 3 team members were surrounded by a huge group of spiders on all sides, and the battle was becoming increasingly difficult for them. The team leader exclaimed that they were continuing to advance. Who saw there were spiders here. There were at least several hundred here who even went on reconnaissance. The swordsman said that it would be hard for them, and the girl behind him announced that she was running out of mana. Deciding to go help, Tian rushed towards them and called out to Junel, telling him to follow him, but he went in the opposite direction and said that he had better help them and he would finish and come later. The guild leader stopped looking at him in confusion, seeing Thath was heading towards the monsters, and one of them attacked him. In the air, he immediately rushed towards him and worriedly told him to lie down on the ground. He thought that if he did not use the sword Shay, he would get hurt. MC at that moment froze in place and closed his eyes, after which she opened them, and they changed in color, reflecting an ethit appeared under the ceiling. The spider that got under this net was immediately pierced by a sharp blade. Antion was very surprised by such a sight. As the spider's corpse fell in front of Juno's feet, he thought that out of all the weapons he could create right now, the sword would be the best quality. It would be more effective to create multiple swords and use them all at once, but with his current amount of mana, that was impossible. He waved his finger slightly, pulling the sword out of the corpse, then pointed forward and thought that he couldn't come up with anything better than this anyway. At his command, the sword rose into the air and began to circle around him, waiting for his next command. Noticing the spiders nearby, MC turned around and pointed his finger at them, sending the sword flying, approaching the monsters. The sword pierced one spider in its path, and then moved on to the next one, moving quickly with just one wave of his hand. Junio controlled the sword, causing it to circle around the cave at a furious speed. At one point he raised his finger to the ceiling, pointing at the rest of the spiders, after which the sword rushed at Furt and swirled around him like a tornado, piercing everything in its path. When it was all over, Tian looked at Jim in surprise, and at the many corpses that were at his feet, and then turned his gaze to the sword, stuck in the spider's body. He thought in confusion, was that an area attack? Watching the sword dissolve, thought that in less than seconds of fighting he dealt with all those dozens of spiders. Did he use materialization in battle? He didn't even know that supports could fight like that. Noticing his gaze, Junio pointed his finger at the rest of the group and asked, "What is he doing? Isn't he going to go help them?" Because of his words, Tian remembered the rest of the guys he initially ran to help, and turned around, seeing that they were already barely standing. Noting that the situation was not the best, he used his skill to tell them that they would talk when it was over. Before he left, Junio called out to him and pointed at the corpses behind him, asking him to deal with it. After Alfie wouldn't think that the assistant did it anyway. Tian pulled down his mask, thinking about it for a second, then pushed off the ground and rushed forward, setting the corpses on fire. Soon the battle was over, and the team members gathered together to rest. The hunter thanked Tian for his help and said that they survived thanks to him, but he was a little surprised at first. He thought he looked familiar, but who would have thought that he was the guild master of Overkill? Tian apologized for not telling him about it right away and explained that he wanted to quietly explore the dungeon. The mage was very excited to find out who he really was, and thanked him, after which she admiringly said that it was so cool to watch him deal with all those spiders. She was a little embarrassed and hesitantly asked if it would be possible to take a photo with him when they left here. The hunter, who returned to them with Junio, did not let her finish, loudly saying that they were back, and she made a dissatisfied face and thought that she had such a wonderful opportunity. The guy apologized to them with a smile for being late. They began to collect side resources. They walked around, and it seemed that there were no more monsters here. He pointed to a dark corridor and said that there was another passage over there. He thought they could go further. The leader sighed heavily and said that he did not think they were able to continue clearing it. Was a pity to do this, but they shouldn't. Here, the swordsman exclaimed in surprise that there was very little left. Why did he decide that? The man stood up and crossed his arms over his chest, saying that the number of spiders they encountered, the geography of the dungeon, everything was different in the intelligence report. Dungeons exist with gates separate from the world dungeon, an area with strange creatures and geographical features that cannot be found on Earth. At the moment, the concept of dungeons and awakened ones is not fully defined, so for those who are new to hunting, the most important thing is information about dungeons. Few awakened ones can adapt to a dungeon if they have never encountered one before. This means defeat, and in the worst case, death. This is how scouts were born. Awakened ones with the ability to detect or hide their tracks band together and begin collecting intelligence on the dungeon. The rank of the strong dungeon increases after such reconnaissance, and so they began to be called scouts. The accuracy of the scouted ones usually exceeds %. It is unlikely that this is just a mistake. It cannot be ruled out that this is also a dungeon with a rank error. The swordsman was confused and wanted to object, then turned his gaze to Tian and asked if the guildmaster is with them. Maybe they can continue. The man said that he understands that they want to continue clearing, but the help of the guildmaster is not enough. If they are not careful, everyone may end up in danger. The guy said in a frustrated tone that he really wanted to clear the dungeon. He had personal reasons. Is there really? No way. The girl also said in a frustrated tone that she wanted to finish the dungeon, and he asked what could be more important than life. If they entered the boss room, there would be no turning back. He didn't want to leave either, but they needed to go out and report the situation first. The guild leader joined the conversation and said that he agreed with them. The team leader looked at him with a puzzled look, and he said that even if he came here to study everything, he was still a member of the team. If the leader decided to continue clearing the dungeon, he had no reason to object, but if he wanted to study everything, he needed to get into the boss room. He glanced at Junio, and he nodded in agreement, and the man bowed to him and said that he would trust him with this. Then he thanked him and started talking about being the team leader, but Tian told him not to worry and to continue leading. The man agreed and said that they would be heading out. Then he told the others to follow him, and as they passed through the huge passage, they found themselves in front of some doors. The team leader stopped it and said that he thought they were at the boss room, so he would give out some final instructions. First off, the boss of this dungeon is a ranked plus Legion Spider Queen. Her overall combat ability is quite high. She is considered a fair Lycée boss, mainly giving birth to Legion spiders, but that is just the initial information. They don't know what kind of creature will be behind that door. He pushed the doors forward, opening them, and said that they are coming in. The doors slowly opened, filling the room with light, and they walked inside, lighting their way. They continued to move forward, and Tian frowned slightly, thinking that he didn't feel any special signs, none at all. The team leader held up a shield in front of him and told the others to get ready. Then they saw a huge spider hanging from the ceiling, and he shouted that it was the boss. The swordsman asked, "Is this the Spider Queen they were talking about?" The mage said with relief that it was good that the boss was the same. Then she pulled out her staff and exclaimed that she would attack first. She conjured a cloud of sparks, which she threw forward, and all the monsters were struck by an electric discharge. She clenched her hand into a fist in joy, but then suddenly her eyes widened in surprise. The corpse of the Spider Queen fell. Her body was cut up and half of her abdomen was missing, but this clearly did not happen because of the mag's attack. Seeing this, the team leader became nervous and thought, is the boss already dead? He had never heard of such a thing. Realizing that something was wrong, he told the team that they were leaving, after which they all felt a powerful pressure coming from the corpse and wondered what it was. Another queen's paw landed on the spider's torn belly, screaming loudly and spreading her arms out to the sides, calling her army. This is Arachnib plus rank. She is the queen who rules all kinds of spider-type monsters. She has high intelligence and is very cunning, does not reproduce, but invades the territories of other monsters of the same type and increases her army at their expense. She can house her power with her minions. Arachne smiled, looking at the frightened people, and then waved her paw to finish them off. But suddenly a flash of flame appeared on her path. Tian blocked her blow with a sword strike and looked upon her, thinking that, who would have thought that this monster would appear here? If the hunter does not know how to handle a sword, then he will not leave even a scratch on her from one blow. His sword had already cracked, and he thought that he needed to bear as much damage as possible with one blow. After that, he rushed to attack and struck the monster's stomach, causing his blade to immediately split into pieces, and he cursed in his mind. Leaving a deep wound in Arachne's stomach, he jumped back and thought that the sword had broken. He would not be able to deliver a fatal blow. The moment he landed, the Spider Queen had already swung her pot to strike, but suddenly collided with Aceward's sword that suddenly appeared, which blocked her strike, protecting Tianm stepped forward and the guild lead Herto stalled for time while he created a new weapon for him. Arachne turned her attention to him and slightly narrowed all three pairs of eyes, smiling evilly. The moment he created a weapon for him, suddenly felt something and shuddered, and looking down at his palm, he wondered, did he use up all his mana? Thinking that it was already incredible that he could hold out for so long, he took out a bottle of potion from his pocket. After drinking it, he thought that the potion can only be used once a day. If you drink more, you will develop an addiction. He threw the bottle aside, and feeling a surge of strength, said with a smile that the effect is good. Junio meanwhile was very worried, and a second later a sword appeared in front of him, and the creator of it told him to stall for time. After that, he turned to the rest of the party and thought that Arachne is a banked boss, if not for the mistake. There should only be one C-rank boss called the Spider Queen. Good thing Tian is here. It would be hard for them to deal with this monster. Not only does the danger level exceed B, the level itself changes at that moment. The new Spider Queen swung her paw, striking, and her opponent immediately parried it, swinging his blade. After that, she started to throw quick punches with a smile, which he immediately parried, and Junio, watching them, thought that the pure combat power exceeded 5A ranked fighters. Regarding Arachne's ability, it is impossible Torley. On Tian alone, he told the rest of the party to stand up, they will have to be ready to fight. Arachne changed her target. The party leader nervously exclaimed, "Who is he?" The other stood up and asked, why did such a talented awaken come here secretly under the guise of an assistant? The girl exclaimed, did he come with the guildmaster? He turned to them and, pointing to the small spiders that were rushing towards them, said that they needed to sort out something first. He waved his hand, creating a weapon, and told them to choose. Would they take the weapon in front of them and clear the dungeon fighting the spiders, or run away and wait outside for everything to be decided? He extended his hand to them and said that he was sure they would make the right choice. After that, the party members took up their new weapons and entered the battle. The swordsman swung his sword, cutting through the spider body with ease, and thought it was incredible. He had never held a weapon like that in his hands. He swung it a few more times, preventing the spiders from attacking, and looking at the clean cuts on their bodies, he thought it was like cutting paper. Was it really that easy to kill monsters? Suddenly, a loud cracking sound distracted him from the battle. The mage girl used magic, and her staff began to emit electrical sparks, and she enjoyed the sight so much that she smiled widely. After that, she confidently swung her staff and brought down flashy soft lightning on the spiders. The team leader was very surprised. He thought that only the weapon had changed, but the power of the skills had increased several times. He created such a good weapon. After the girl's blow, only Charcorp corpse remained on the ground, and the team leader, turning his gaze to Junio, exclaimed in his thoughts, "Who ish?" Meanwhile, Tian's sword was still intact. He caught his breath after a series of blows and gritted his teeth, thinking that this was to be expected. From a banked boss, it was difficult to buy time. His opponent smiled widely and then screamed loudly, leaning towards him, and her body already had many cuts from his blows. Igniting the sword with flames again, he thought that he needed to end this as soon as possible. An Arachne in the light emitted by his blade froze for a moment. After that, Tian rushed to attack, but she was not going to give up so easily, and swung her hand, but he was faster and dealt a powerful fire blow from which she immediately fell. After that, he looked down at the blade and thought that the weapon was still intact. It was better than imagined. Suddenly, on the ground, he noticed many small spiders, and the girl, looking around anxiously, exclaimed, "Where they come from and where are they going?" The team leader exclaimed that they were all going to the guildmaster Chen, turned to them and ordered them to retreat back, after which he thought, did she hide the spiders? The situation is complicated. She activated her ability. The spiders completely covered the wounded place on Arachne's body, and Tian said that she sacrificed the spiders, with which she restored her health. After that, all the wounds on Arachne's head were healed, and she looked up at her opponent and then pushed herself off the ground with her hands helping herself toasted up, and again towered over the man, looking up at the SP Fighter Queen and the 1,000 small minions behind her, hissed that, until they killed them all, she would revive again and again. He activated the skill and rushed to attack, thinking that he needed to increase his firepower to end everything with one blow. Suddenly, his blade cracked, and Hanatais hinked this cursed loudly, and at the same time, MC said with a smile that he was better than he imagined. He stretched out his hand forward, creating a weapon again, and said that, although he created a sword from the remains of mana, but he did not think that it would destroy it. After that, a huge sword was stuck into the ground near Tian's feet, and Mick told him to take it. It is not a one-handed sword, unlike the ones he used before. It is the strongest weapon he can create at the moment. Tian worthlessly placed his hand on the hilt and thought that he felt it. As soon as he took hold of the sword, he felt that with this weapon he could defeat them all in one blow. The blade in his hand immediately caught fire, and fiery cracks began to spread out from the tip along the ground. He smiled and said that he was not very familiar with two-handed swords, but it seemed to suit him after that. He pulled each sword out of the ground and, putting all his strength into holding it, gritted his teeth and rushed forward. As soon as Ash was close enough, he swung the sword and delivered a powerful fire strike. Arachne became nervous and gritted her teeth, and her face was illuminated by a flash of flame, which soon pierced through her body, and a powerful explosion was heard. Junio thought that the explosion was a basic berserker skill. This was probably the first time Tand was using it in full berserker. Loses control of himself in exchange for gaining overwhelming power. So Heprabai didn't use it, because it's hard to handle the risk that would come with having the weapon shatter into pieces. Tian, meanwhile, lowered his sword and stood still, and then flames started coming out of his mouth immediately.